This is the Villain Marty Scurll, and I've been a professional wrestler for 20 years. I've wrestled all over the world and worked with some of the biggest names in the industry. And today, I'm going to share some of my wisdom, some of the advice that I've accumulated over the years as I answer your wrestling training questions. What is the best way to find the right gimmick? When it comes to finding a gimmick, often your gimmick will find you. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, it's about amplifying the attributes that you already have. So your gimmick will depend on how you look, how you talk, your physique, the way you wrestle, your background. All these attributes will contribute to what your wrestling gimmick will end up being. Let me put it this way, right? So Rey Mysterio, his gimmick is the ultimate underdog luchador. Now, I couldn't play that gimmick because I'm not a luchador. Just like I couldn't play Andre the Giant's gimmick. Also, just like how I couldn't do Dusty Rhodes' gimmick. He's the working man. He's the son of a plumber. He's from the South. And the way he wrestles, his style, that brawler style, it really matches that gimmick, that using your hands, working man's gimmick. Again, I couldn't play that gimmick. So you have to find a gimmick that makes sense to who you are, to how you talk. Something that you can pull off. Like I mentioned, sometimes it will depend on the way you wrestle. Look at Zack Sabre Jr., for example. He hasn't got the biggest gimmick, but his gimmick essentially is the submission expert, that he can catch you at any point in any submission. And that gimmick is purely based on his wrestling style. What about Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid? How did he come up with that? Well, it's pretty obvious. He was a heartthrob, so it just made sense. He's a heartthrob, let's turn him heel, and now he's arrogant and loves himself. And then let's just amplify that and turn that up to the max. So I often think it's about finding your unfair advantage over everyone else. What can you do differently to everyone else? What makes you stand out to everyone else? When I was coming up with my gimmick, the Villain Marty Scurll, it was a whole process. But I knew that I wanted to break out into America and break out into Japan. Like, okay, I'm British, so I want to be British. That's what I can offer to an American company. That's what I can offer to a Japanese company. They already have American wrestlers. They already have Japanese wrestlers. I will present them the best British wrestler I can. And I didn't want to go over the top and come out with a Union Jack or have it all over my gear. I thought, how can I represent my country? One of the first things I thought of was, an umbrella. That is particularly British. Then I started thinking about what's the rest of the world's perceptions of British people. And yeah, they might think royalty, they might think of the Beatles. But then I was thinking, there's some pretty famous British villains out there, movie villains. And I thought, maybe I could be a British movie villain. That's what I could do better than anybody else. And that morphed into my gimmick where I'm a flamboyant British villain, and that worked for me. So often it's just about exploring things, exploring yourself, but the most important thing is just try things out. Try and wrestle as many times as you can, and don't be afraid to try things. With me, the villain, it took me many years of wrestling to come up with that gimmick, and when I first came up with it to what it's become, many changes, and I've tried so many different things. So try and take as many dates as possible. If you can go and tour somewhere, wrestle as much as possible and just try different stuff out, and I promise you eventually something will stick. I remember with my villain character, I first started coming out with a denim vest with studs on, but I was just trying something different, and that didn't necessarily work. And then I came out with a fur coat, and I was like, I put the fur coat on and I thought, oh yeah, like I feel like a villain. This is cool. And that really helped me develop the gimmick. And then later on, I saw a Plague Doctor mask on the front of an album cover. And I thought, you know what? That would look really cool coming to the ring with one of them. So I got that mask. And then from there, got that jacket to go with the mask. And that really helped me develop my character, which is funny because I've heard a quote before from Raven. And he said, how to come up with a gimmick? He said, get a ring jacket. Now, at first, I was kind of confused to what Raven meant by that, but I think if you just don't know where to start, that's a good way to start. Find yourself a ring jacket. Think about the famous wrestlers over the years that have come to the ring wearing something. Look at Ric Flair's robe. There's only one type of character that can really wear a robe like that, and it's typically a wrestler's wrestler, a heel. That worked for Ric Flair. Look at Raven, who's doing all sorts of different gimmicks. Johnny Polo, Scotty Flamingo. Eventually, he got a cool biker jacket. He put it on and he thought, you know what? I feel kind of grungy. And that helped him come up with the Raven gimmick. And then from there, he went on and added layers, added depth to it. He was going to be a spoiled rich kid that had gone off the wagon, had turned into grunge, and that really helped Raven out. How do you put a match together? Do you follow the 7 steps another way or just work? Now, that's a great question. I have heard of the 7 steps before. Let me think. I think it's start, babyface shine, heat, hope spot, more heat, comeback, finish. Now, this is a very basic structure to a wrestling match, and that could certainly work. But remember, there's no rules in wrestling whatsoever. It's completely up to you. Ultimately, we're just trying to tell the best story possible. So if that's a story you want to tell, that's absolutely fine. What I will say is this: the story that you're going to tell is going to all depend on who you're wrestling, where you are in the card, what type of show it is, if there's a story to it. There's so many contributing things. For example, if I'm wrestling a guy that's 7 foot tall, clearly there's a story that we're going to tell there. Small guy versus big guy. Maybe I'm wrestling a rookie, and that's the story we're going to tell. We're the same size, but I'm a veteran, he's a rookie. We're going to tell that story throughout the match. Maybe we'll tell the tortoise and their hair story, where because I'm the veteran, I've got so much more experience over this rookie. I start tying up in knots and I'm like, this is easy. But then I get too arrogant. I get too carried away. My full attention is not on him, and then boom, 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 I slip and he's taken over on me. Arm drag, drop kick. Oh, I fell out the ring. Oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's a great story that we can tell in the ring. So as for the 7 steps, again, it all depends. If you have a 3-minute TV match, obviously you're not going to do these 7 steps. Maybe you'll do 2 of the steps. Maybe it's just you start the match straight into the heat, ding, 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 and then babyface goes into a finish or the heel goes into a finish. It all depends. But this is a good basic structure. I don't really like the idea of heat, then hope spot. I personally don't really plan hope spots. I'll fight back and I won't die during the heat, and I'll give the crowd a moment of hope, but I don't really like the word hope spot. So for me, how do I put together a match? Again, it all comes down to the story. If I've got a big feud with someone, maybe we're going to start hot, bish, bash, boff. We're going to start blows at the very beginning of the match. If I'm the opener of the show and it's a cold match, there's no story whatsoever, maybe I'm just going to give the crowd a nice, simple wrestling match. Start the show with a lockup, take a headlock takedown, shoot off tackle, and most likely we'll run a comeback into the finish. Probably no false finishes. If I'm later in the show and it's a bigger, more built match, maybe I'll change that. Maybe he'll do a comeback, maybe I'll do a comeback, and then maybe we'll exchange false finishes. So how you put a match together is completely dependent on the story. The story is the most important part of putting together a wrestling match. If someone wants to get started in the wrestling business with ring crew or training, what is some advice? Honestly, you've kind of answered your own question. If you want to get started in the wrestling business, offering to help out with the ring is a great way to get in, especially with independent promoters. They're always going to need extra help. They're always going to need extra bodies, as they may put it. Now with social media, it's so easy to reach out to promoters and ask if they need a hand. Back when I was young and I was trying to get started in the wrestling business, I just used to turn up to shows early and try and get into the building and ask if I could help out with the ring, or just started helping out with the ring, and people were like, who's that? And just, oh, he must be with someone, and I would get myself into buildings pretending to be ring crew. You don't have to do that. You can message promoters, ask if they need help. Chances are they will. And don't just offer to help out with the ring. You can also ask the promoter, hey, do you need help with picking up any wrestlers? Typically, independent shows, wrestlers will be flying in all different times. Promoters need people to go pick them up. We all know Ubers are expensive. So if you offer to help out there, chances are the promoter will take you up on it. Hey Marty, how was the plan of creating the villain? Now, this question I get asked every single week, all the time. So I've gone into it many a times. I've kind of already gone into it during this video, but for me, it was all about standing out. Now, I'm not the biggest guy. I'm probably 5'9", maybe 5'10", 190 pounds, not the biggest guy. But I knew that I needed to be larger than life to make it in the wrestling industry. I actually read the Road Warriors autobiography, and they were talking in there about how they wanted to stand out, and they were already big, jacked up guys. They decided to shave their heads with the mohawks, they had the face paint, and they had the shoulder pads with spikes. And I was thinking, whoa, like, I'm not doing anything to stand out. I had short back and sides haircut, no beard, and I thought, I just wrestled in trunks, so I thought, wow, I've got some stuff to come up with. And that's how I ended up coming up with the big, elaborate entrance with the ring jacket, the mask, the hat, the umbrella. I grew my facial hair out. I got this silly haircut, which now is a very common haircut, but I'm pretty positive I was the first person in wrestling to do the top knot. But yes, it's an ever developing thing, the gimmick. I'm always sort of adding to it and having twists and turns. It's evolved. Ultimately, I came up with the gimmick out of the desire to be different to everyone else. I'm not the biggest guy. I'm not the best high flyer. I'm not got the best physique, I'm not the most handsome guy. What can I do better than everyone else? The answer, be the Villain Marty Scurll. There's no other Villain Marty Scurlls out there, so it's important for me to stand out as much as I could. How many moves should a wrestler have in his arsenal? There's not a correct answer, but I will say this. You'll hear a lot of people in wrestling and veterans say that moves aren't important. Well, I'm here to tell you, they are. Of course, moves are important. They're not the most important thing at all, but they are important. These are your ingredients that are going to make up your character. What would Stone Cold Steve Austin be without the Stone Cold Stunner? What would Randy Orton be without the RKO? What would Triple H be without the pedigree? The Rock without the people's elbow? So when people say moves aren't important, they're wrong, okay? That being said, you don't need 10, 20, 50 wrestling moves to get over. If you think of the biggest wrestlers of all time, they typically did 3 to 5, maximum 7 things to get themselves over. You look at Hogan, he did the punch, the big boot, the leg drop. That was enough. Stone Cold Steve Austin did the Fez press, he did the stomps in the corner, he did the stunner. You look at The Rock, he had the spine buster, the rock bottom, people's elbow. What else did The Rock do? A bad sharpshooter sometimes. But here's the thing. It's not how many moves can you do, it's how many moves can you get over. So with me, I can do a whole bunch of moves, and I've tried every move that is imaginable. But typically, the moves that I'll do in my match that get the best reactions, I do the finger break, I do the chicken wing and the whole crowd goes chicken wing. I do the super kick, just kidding, which the whole crowd gets involved with as well. And that is my 3 fundamental moves that everyone knows and gets behind. And when you have this move set, it's very easy to put together matches because you go, okay, I'm going to give them the villain's greatest hits. I put this here, I put this here, I put this here. So when you're putting together a match with someone, I say, this is what I do. What do you do? Okay, let's do all those things together. Simple, huh? The worst thing you can do if your opponent asks you, what do you do? Or what do you want to do? What do you do? And you answer, I've had this many a times. Often I think it's people just trying to be too cool for school. But I say, okay, so what do you do? And they'll say, oh, anything really. Take some heat. I'm like, no, tell me what you do. What are your moves? What are your spots? No, give me an answer. It's hard enough for me to come up with my moves. You tell me what you do. So anytime a wrestler comes to me and they say, what do you do? I'm right there. I'm like, boom, 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 boom. Here's my moves. Take your pick. So my advice would be to take the 5 best things that you do, the ones that you can execute every single time, the ones that get the best reaction with the crowd, and just stick to them. And as you keep doing them, as you keep performing them in front of the audience, eventually the crowd is going to get to know them, and then they're going to expect to see them. Just like when you see a band and you want to hear their greatest hits. You don't want to hear the new stuff. You don't want to hear a song that you've not heard before. It's the exact same thing with pro wrestling. When we see Jeff Hardy, we want to see the Swanton Bomb. When we see Rob Van Dam, we want to see the Rolling Thunder, the Frog Splash. If he was trying new moves every single time, we'd be like, I want to see the Frog Splash. What do you think is something many of the young guys are lacking in today's day and age? How do I say this without burying anyone? I think when I watch wrestling in today's day and age, I think you may agree, I see a lot of people doing the same things, particularly the same moves, but even the same poses, the same type of gear, the same type of character. This for me doesn't really work. If I turn on the TV or I watch an independent show and everyone's doing diamond cutters, Canadian destroyers, Spanish flies, all these moves that you've seen so many guys do, it's kind of interchangeable and no one to me really sticks out. Me personally, I think the reason why I managed to get over with the audience was because I was able to be different to everybody else. So if I did a move, as soon as someone copied it or started doing that move, I'd be like, right, scrap that, because I don't want to be like anybody else. We all know that if you do a Spanish fly or a Canadian destroyer, you're gonna get a reaction from the crowd. But have you really worked for that reaction? To me, there's nothing better than getting an idea, something that's never been done before, and then trying it out with the audience and seeing if it gets a reaction. And if it does, it's like, whoa, I've worked for that pop. I've created something new and original and it worked, rather than just taking a move that people have seen a million times and just doing it and getting that cheap pop. It's kind of lazy, if anything. So what do I think today's day and age wrestlers are lacking? I think it's being different and not standing out from the pack, which I think is very important. How important would you say your entrance music is? Honestly, entrance music is very, very important. This is the first thing people are going to see, and you know what they say, first impressions is everything. The music is a big, big part of your character. I know when I came up with the villain character, for me, it was very important for me to be very hands-on in creating my entrance music. This is what is going to get the crowd pumped up. This is how the crowd is going to know you by. Entrance music, it's so important. Think of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Think of Real American. Think of Stone Cold Steve Austin's Glass Break. Think of If You Smell What the Rock is Cooking. It's so important. So if you're an independent wrestler or you're wrestling on TV, make sure you're in control of your entrance music. If you can be, but I would definitely recommend getting something custom made, because then you own the music, no one can take it away from you, and it's unique to you. So I would recommend finding someone that makes music, working with them and giving them some examples and going from there. But your entrance music is so important. Do you think big guys should be doing cruiserweight moves? Again, it's all kind of circumstantial. Do I think big guys should be doing cruiserweight moves? Now, I think it's perfectly fine if they do, but I do think there's a time and a place. I will say this, if you look at the big guys in the wrestling industry that really got over, the majority of them didn't really do any high flying moves. And if they did, they normally saved it for a special occasion, like The Undertaker with his dive at WrestleMania. If a big guy can do really cool high-flying things, I think that's really cool, but he needs to do it in the realm of telling a story. Those high-risk moves are called high risk for a reason, so if it makes sense for him to take that risk, maybe it's a big match, maybe he's tried everything possible in his arsenal and it's not worked, and he's like, you know what, taking this high risk, it's gonna work. I feel like that's going to have a lot more meaning than just being a big guy and being like, hey, look at my cartwheels, look at my moonsaults, look at my flip over the top rope. That's my opinion, but there's no rules in wrestling, so that's just how I look at it. I honestly think the big guys that don't do high flying moves, or at least a lot of high flying moves, tend to be more over. What does it take to stand out amongst today's wrestlers? I've kind of gone into that already. You just got to be different. You've got to work out what your unique selling point is. What can you offer a promotion, or what can you offer the promoters that's different from everything else? If you're 1 in 100, then they're going to say that. I've already got a guy like you. What can you offer? Maybe that's that you're an amazing talker. Maybe you have an amazing look. Maybe you're in a unique tag team. Maybe you're a great technical wrestler. Maybe you're a great high flyer. But for example, if you're a great high flyer, then if you really want to stand out, you better be the best high flyer in the world. Take me, for example. I can do some high flying things. I can do a moonsault to the outside, a 450 splash and dives. But here's the thing, I can't do them as good as a Will Ospreay or as a Young Bucks or a Ricochet or Phoenix, etc, etc. So do I want to be the 100th best guy at high flying? Absolutely not. So work out what stands out for you and run with that. Think about that. What is your unique selling point? If you can answer that question, then you're onto a winner. What made you choose the crossface chicken wing as your finisher? So when I turned heel, when I became the villain, I wanted a finishing move that was not flashy at all. I didn't want to get any cheers. And I was thinking, what is the most boring wrestling move I can take and then try and get over? And I came up with the crossface chicken wing. I was a big fan of Bob Backlund. Also, Norman Smiley used the crossface chicken wing, and also Six, Sean Waltman in WCW used the chicken wing as well, and I was a big fan of his. So I thought, you know what, the crossface chicken wing would be a really good move for me. Why? I can get that move on anyone, doesn't matter the size, the shape, on anyone at any time. Not only that, but the move can be reversed. That's very easy. And yeah, I can get it out of nowhere. So it's the perfect move. It doesn't involve me taking a bump, which means I could do it until I'm 80, I'm sure, just like Bob Backlund does. Now, I have got so many questions here, but I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. So maybe eventually I'll do a part 2. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video today and you would actually like to learn with the one true villain, Marty Scurll, well, guess what? You can, because right now, the Villain Marty Scurll, I am offering online coaching. Yes, I can be your mentor. I'm offering one-on-one wrestling training sessions via Zoom, and you can purchase this at martyscurll.bigcartel.com. In our sessions, we'll go through things like psychology, storytelling, your character, your gimmick. And I feel like one of the best ways to get the most out of this is what we can also do is we will pull up one of your wrestling matches, we'll watch it together, and then we'll do a breakdown and I will give you my honest feedback. So if you ever wanted to be mentored by the one true villain, here's your chance. No matter where you are in the whole entire world, I wish I had a service like this offered to me when I was getting started, or even my first 10 years. Well, even now, I could do with this even now, to have someone give me advice, to have someone watch my matches and give me their feedback. That is so valuable. So if you want to learn from the one true villain, purchase your session now at martyscurll.bigcartel.com and you'll receive an email where we can schedule a time. Like I said before, I have wrestled all over the world. I believe 34 countries, have worked with some of the greatest talents in the world, wrestled all different types of styles, and now I feel like it's a great time for me to give back. So I'm afraid that's all we have time for. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, please share, and please subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll make some more. Until next time, long live the villain.